Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom, the show where we explore the fascinating intersection of modern science, natural health, and the undeniable fact that neither Ilara nor I ever knew how to properly calculate body mass index. I'm Ethan Foster, your dependable observer of all things human, especially the parts we can't measure with just one number.
And I'm Ilara Sky. I like to think of myself as the comedic lens that focuses on the big issues, from obesity to microwaved leftovers. One is definitely worse than the other, by the way, and I'll let you guess which.
This might shock everyone, but apparently not everything boils down to how many pounds you weigh and how many inches you stand. I think we've all encountered that well-worn BMI chart in a doctor's office. You know, the one that says if you're 6 feet tall and weigh 201 pounds, you've just boarded the train to Overweightville. Kinda simplistic, isn't it?
Only if you consider ignoring all of human diversity simplistic. I mean, a bodybuilder with 5% body fat might have a high BMI, but it's not as though their biceps are made of Twinkie filling. Yet the BMI says, "Congratulations, dear athlete. You're on the fast track to obesity. Please hand in your spandex shorts at the door." It's basically the yardstick that lumps together everyone above a certain weight threshold, never mind if it's muscle bone, or you happen to be wearing steel-toed boots.
That's a visual, and it's exactly the sort of oversimplification that's gotten a lot of people misdiagnosed. We've learned there's something new on the horizon, the distinction between what's being called preclinical and clinical obesity. The old BMI scale sounds like it might need a big overhaul.
I love a good overhaul. It's like that feeling when you throw out all your scratched Tupperware and finally invest in nice glass containers. A fresh start. Scientists and researchers are now saying that if you're carrying extra fat, but it's not triggering organ dysfunction or metabolic mayhem, you're in the realm of what they call preclinical obesity. If, however, your extra fat is actively damaging organs or messing up your daily life, that's clinical obesity. In other words, it's not just about the weight on the scale, it's about what your body's fat distribution is doing to your insides.
I can practically hear a collective sigh of relief from muscular folks everywhere. They can now triumphantly rip up their old BMI labels with their massive forearms. But for others, it means we can't rely on that convenient little number if our health depends on it. The Lancet study points out that you could have a normal BMI, but still harbor metabolic dysfunction, organ damage, or hidden pockets of problematic fat. I guess it's like wearing a well-fitted outfit with all the wrong pockets concealed.
Exactly. In fact, some folks look perfectly lean, but inside, it's like a Game of Thrones episode. Total chaos lurking beneath the surface. The key is functional impairment, meaning how your body is actually operating. If extra body fat is in there, messing with your insulin sensitivity, damaging your liver, or spiking inflammation, that's the real problem. Thin people aren't automatically healthy, just like how wearing glasses doesn't automatically make you a bookworm.
The big message is that metabolic dysfunction can hit anyone, no matter how normal the scale reads. The study also highlights that weight stigma has complicated everything. Because if you're labeled as obese, you might avoid seeking care due to fear of being judged. Or, ironically, you might cope by eating more. That stigma can do serious damage, physically and emotionally.
It's the sad reality of bias. Imagine going to the doctor about a headache and hearing, well, maybe if you lost weight. Meanwhile, the headache is from staring at your phone trying to schedule an appointment with 3 different specialists. There's an assumption that weight is the universal root of every evil, when in fact it might just be a side effect of metabolic disturbances that no one's tested for.
The new approach is all about focusing on metabolic health, rather than hammering away at the scale. That means paying closer attention to insulin levels, inflammation markers, and body composition. And we definitely need a better yardstick than BMI alone.
I can't decide which yardstick we want. Maybe the waist-to-hip ratio or waist-to-height ratio. They're pushing for these measurements because they actually tell you how fat is distributed. If all your weight is concentrated in your midsection, that's more concerning than if it's more evenly spaced around your frame. Central obesity is the real troublemaker. In short, if your waist is basically competing with your height, that's a red flag.
Yes, if your waist is half your height, that's a sign you might be creeping into dangerous territory, like a kind of slow-motion version of building a donut-shaped life preserver around your torso. So, measuring your waist and dividing by your hip size, or dividing your waist by your height, can paint a much more accurate picture. And it's pretty easy to do at home.
Absolutely. And that, my friend, is the difference between one-liner math and real life. BMI is the one-liner, short, sweet, but it can miss a ton of context. Waist measurements, body composition scans, metabolic markers, these add the detail that reveals whether you're in preclinical obesity or clinical obesity, or in perfect metabolic shape, or somewhere in the messy middle.
Now, I know, doctor, Mercola emphasizes not just weight, but how that excess fat is actually harming your body. He highlights that obesity has become a chronic health condition, not just a number. So, if we're talking solutions, it's not about obsessing over dieting at all costs. It's about addressing our diet's composition. Specifically, those villainous vegetable oils.
Yes, the notorious vegetable oils that sound so wholesome. Vegetable is right in the name. But in reality, they might as well call them secret metabolic saboteurs. They're in practically everything processed, from salad dressings to chips. The argument is that they inflame your system and create a kind of perfect storm for weight gain and metabolic issues.
And by perfect storm, you mean our poor mitochondria get hammered. Those are our little cellular powerhouses, forced to handle the fallout from these oils. Meanwhile, you can be limiting carbs all you want, but if you're guzzling these seed oils, your metabolism might be stuck in quicksand.
So, ironically, the first step might not be to cut carbs drastically. It could be to eliminate or seriously cut back those inflammatory oils and processed foods. And get this, Mercola suggests that most adults might need more carbs than they realize, especially if they're active. That means focusing on nutrient-dense, whole food carbs like fruits or even white rice to support metabolic health.
I already see diet aficionados everywhere gasping. Isn't that sacrilege to mention white rice as a healthy carb? For years, we've been told to run screaming from anything that isn't cauliflower rice or kale, but apparently, if you're physically active and otherwise healthy, you can handle a moderate amount of something more starchy.
It's not about demonizing every carb in existence. It's about telling the difference between refined garbage, and I say that lovingly, and real whole food sources. When you starve your body of all carbs, you might mess up your thyroid, stress your adrenals, and then, ironically, impair your metabolism further. Moderation and quality are key.
Quality is also key when it comes to fats. Dr. Mercola's stance is to replace those ominous seed oils, corn, soy, canola, all that stuff, with healthier options like grass-fed butter, tallow, ghee, or coconut oil. It's a tough shift, but once you realize how many products contain those seed oils, you develop eagle eyes in the grocery store.
You basically become a label-reading detective, scanning for the culprits. And yes, it's an adjustment. But if the payoff is better metabolic health and less organ stress, it's worth it. Plus, once you find the right cooking method, you'll discover real flavors you never knew existed without all those processed ingredients.
That's the hope. Speaking of real flavors, that leads us to micronutrients. If you're short on key vitamins and minerals, it's like trying to operate your body's machinery without the proper tools. Magnesium, vitamin D, they're not just optional accessories. They can make or break your metabolic function.
And let's not forget that if you're stuck indoors all the time, your vitamin D might be in the basement. Yet, Dr. Mercola points out that you should be cautious about sun exposure if your diet's still loaded with vegetable oils. Those oils, apparently, increase your risk of sunburn. So there's a synergy here. Address the oils, gradually improve your diet, and then your skin might handle sunlight in a healthier way.
It's a lot of moving parts, but they converge on one principle: fix the underlying metabolic dysfunction. And interestingly, one of the best ways to get your metabolism back on track is to stress the importance of strength training. Building muscle can shift your body from storing fat to feeding muscle growth.
Right, muscle is like a furnace that burns fuel more effectively. You don't need to become a bodybuilder, but some targeted resistance workouts can be a game changer. That said, moderate daily movement like walking is also essential. We're not just lumps of clay meant to sit in front of screens 24/7. Everyday walking can regulate blood sugar, circulation, and mood. It's the simplest activity that can make a huge difference.
And it's not some punishing CrossFit ordeal either. The message is that gentle, consistent movement is far more sustainable than sporadic bursts of extreme workouts, especially if your metabolism is already struggling. Combine strength sessions a few times a week with daily walking, and you're on your way to better metabolic function.
There you have it. Cut the vegetable oils, fix micronutrient deficiencies, eat the right carbs, do some strength training, and you might just transform how your body handles energy. It's like giving yourself an upgrade from the original smartphone to the latest model. Suddenly, everything runs more smoothly.
The next question is, where does BMI come into this new worldview? It seems we can't rely on it as the final word on obesity. We should really look at waist measurements, body composition, and real signs of organ and metabolic health. If your lab results and other markers are stable, then being labeled overweight by BMI alone might not mean you're truly in the danger zone.
Right, or the reverse. If your BMI looks normal but your lab tests show spiking insulin, you might be a ticking time bomb, to use a slightly dramatic phrase. It's that hidden fat accumulation that's the real culprit. If your cells are functionally struggling, then you've got a problem no matter what the scale says.
I like the nuance here. It's less about shaming people for their body shape and more about genuinely understanding what's happening under the hood. When obesity is redefined as a chronic condition that disrupts metabolism, there's less moralizing and more problem solving.
You can't just say, "Why push away from the dinner table and move more, buddy," if the real issue is systemic inflammation and insulin resistance. Sometimes it's exactly that kind of simplistic approach that leads to yo-yo dieting, frustration, and more stigma. People give up, blame themselves, and the cycle continues.
So, to recap for our listeners, the new definition of obesity involves looking for organ damage and functional impairment from excess fat, not just the scale reading. The Lancet study proposes labeling these stages as preclinical obesity, where you have extra fat but no major organ damage, and clinical obesity, where the fat is actively harming you.
Exactly. And if you fall into clinical obesity, The recommended approach is evidence-based treatment targeting metabolic and functional improvements. Whereas if you're preclinical, you might just need regular checkups and lifestyle tweaks to prevent sliding into that clinical stage. It's a more personalized approach.
And the first step is to figure out your real metabolic status. Check your waist-to-hip ratio, waist-to-height ratio, and consider getting tests like fasting insulin. Move on from obsessing over the scale, because losing a bunch of weight won't necessarily fix anything if you're still inflamed or micronutrient deficient. The real question is, do your organs love you or want to file a complaint?
Odds are, if you're fueling yourself with a lineup of processed foods, there are a few departmental complaints from your mitochondria. They're probably drafting a strongly worded letter right now. Stop feeding us these oils, we're trying to keep you alive here. Meanwhile, muscle cells are tapping their feet, waiting for a chance to do their job.
Well, we can't let the mitochondria down, so it's time to treat them right. For everyone listening, the solution to obesity under this new framework: ditch the damaging stuff, bring in nutrient-dense, anti-inflammatory foods, move your body with some strength training and daily walks, and ensure you've got the vitamins and minerals you need for optimum function.
It's really about rethinking your entire lifestyle, not just going on a crash diet or getting lost in the labyrinth of dietary fads. If we do that, we might just stop measuring ourselves against an outdated yardstick and start measuring what truly matters: health from the inside out.
Consider that the new call to action. We're not just numbers on a chart, folks. We're complex systems that deserve better diagnostics and more effective strategies. And if your doctor says otherwise, hand them this new perspective. Carefully, of course, with a polite grin, and see if they'll get on board.
Maybe open with, "Doc, my waist-to-height ratio has me concerned that I might be in the preclinical zone. Let's run some advanced tests, shall we? Watch them do a double take. Because, let's face it, stepping on a scale is a very limited snapshot. We need the whole photo album."
And that photo album needs a wide-angle lens. Before we wrap up, Ilara, any final comedic wisdom about reevaluating obesity in the modern age?
Sure. Let's treat our metabolisms like a team of brilliant, underappreciated interns. We need to give them proper tools, nutrients, stable blood sugar levels, healthy fats, so they can do their best work. Then, stand back and watch them power the entire company. Ignore them, and they're going to quietly sabotage your entire operation.
That is both hilarious and oddly poignant. On that note, we're thrilled you joined us today. This has been Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. I'm Ethan Foster, reminding you that BMI might be about as useful as a broken tape measure if you're really looking for health answers.
And I'm Alara Sky, encouraging you to move, eat well, and stop letting that old BMI chart define who you are. Tune in next time for more witty banter and deep dives into the biology that shapes us.
Until then, remember, your body is doing the best it can. Maybe give it a helping hand. And please, keep those vegetable oils on the shelf of forgotten relics. Stay curious, stay healthy, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe now and click the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.